Captain Dongwu stood on the bridge of the New Seoul, watching the stars through the large front window. His ship was the most advanced vessel humanity had ever built. It carried 300 crew members on their first journey beyond the solar system. They had been traveling for 6 months, searching for new worlds and hoping to meet other intelligent life. "Captain, we are picking up something strange," said Commander Soo-jin from her station. She was the ship's tactical officer, a smart woman, who had studied alien contact procedures for years. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. "There are 5 large ships heading toward us. They are not human ships." Dongwu felt his heart beat faster. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. First contact with alien life. He had dreamed of this day since he was a child reading science fiction books. "Put it on the main screen," he ordered. The view changed to show 5 massive warships approaching their position. Each ship was 3 times larger than the New Seoul. They were dark purple with strange symbols glowing along their sides. The ships moved in perfect formation, like they had done this many times before. "Open a communication channel," Dongwu said. "Let's try to talk to them." Soo-jin worked at her controls. "Channel open, sir. This is Captain Dongwu of the human vessel New Seoul. We come in peace. We wish to establish friendly contact with your people." For several minutes, there was only silence. Then the main screen flickered and an alien face appeared. The creature had gray skin, 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the voice was deep and filled with contempt. "I am Captain Krelvax of the Vorthan Empire. You will surrender your vessel immediately. Your species will serve the Empire or be destroyed." Dongwu tried to stay calm. "We don't want any trouble. We are explorers, not warriors. Perhaps we can discuss this peacefully." Krelvax made a sound that might have been laughter. "All species say this when they first meet us. You will learn to obey, just like the others." Dr. Hanuol, the ship's alien life specialist, stepped forward. She had been studying the aliens' appearance and behavior. "Captain, I think we should be very careful. Their body language suggests they see us as inferior." Before Dongwu could respond, Soo-jin shouted from her station, "Captain, another human ship is approaching from the outer system. It's the Hope of Bizan, a civilian transport." Dongwu's face went pale. The Hope of Bizan carried 3,000 colonists, including many families with children. They were heading to establish a new colony on a distant world. Contact them immediately. Tell them to stay away, but it was too late. The Vorthan ships had already detected the civilian vessel. Captain Krelvax smiled, showing all of his sharp teeth. "Perfect. We will demonstrate the price of resistance." "No, wait," Dongwu shouted. "Those are civilians. They have no weapons." "There are children on that ship." "Exactly," Krelvax replied. "Now you will understand the power of the Vorthan Empire." One of the alien warships turned toward the Hope of Bizan. A bright blue beam shot out from its front section. The human transport ship, which had been moving peacefully through space just moments before, simply vanished in a flash of light. 3,000 people died in an instant. The bridge of the New Seoul fell silent. The crew stared at the empty space where the Hope of Bizan had been. Some of them had friends on that ship. Others had family members. Dr. Hanulo covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to be sick. Commander Soo-jin was the first to speak. Her voice was very quiet, but there was something dangerous in it. "They just murdered 3,000 innocent people." Dongwu felt something cold settle in his stomach. In all their preparations for first contact, they had never imagined this. They had expected challenges, maybe misunderstandings, but not the casual murder of civilians. "Captain Krelvax," Dongwu said, fighting to keep his voice steady, "you have just committed an act of war against humanity." The alien laughed again. "War? You primitive creatures do not understand war. That was not war. That was a lesson. Now you will surrender, or we will teach you more lessons." Soo-jin looked at her captain. "Sir, what are your orders?" Dongwu thought about the 3,000 people who had just died. He thought about the families who would never see their loved ones again. He thought about the children who had been looking forward to starting new lives on a distant world. "Record everything," he said quietly. "Make sure every detail of this encounter is transmitted back to Earth. The people need to know what happened here." "You still do not understand," Krelvax said. "Your species will surrender now, or we will destroy every human ship, every human world, every human life. We have done this to 400 other species. You are nothing special." Dr. Hanuel studied the alien's face on the screen. "Captain, I think he truly believes humans will just give up. I don't think he understands our species at all." The communication ended abruptly. The alien ships began to move into an attack formation around the new soul, but Dongwu was no longer thinking about surrender. He was thinking about something much more important. "Sujin, how long until our message reaches Earth?" he asked. At maximum transmission speed, about 6 hours, sir." Good. Make sure they understand exactly what happened to the Hope of Bizen. Make sure they know these aliens. See civilian murder as acceptable." Sujin began working at her station, preparing the transmission. As she worked, she spoke quietly to her captain. "Sir, what do you think Earth will do when they receive this message?" Dongwu looked out at the alien ships surrounding them. He thought about humanity's long history of warfare. He thought about how humans had always responded to attacks on innocent people. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They thought they were dealing with a weak species that would surrender quickly. They had no idea what they had just started. "I think," Dongwu said slowly, "that Captain Krelvax is about to learn the difference between conquest and obliteration." The message was sent. It raced through space toward Earth, carrying with it the images of the Hope of Bizen's destruction, and the alien captain's words about teaching humanity lessons. By the time it arrived, it would change everything. The Vorthan Empire had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. They had conquered species after species using the same methods. Show overwhelming force. Destroy civilians to prove their power. Wait for surrender. It had always worked before, but they had never encountered humans. As the new soul was captured and its crew taken prisoner, none of the aliens understood the significance of what they had done. They had just introduced humanity to galactic politics in the worst possible way. They had shown humans that the galaxy was a place where innocent people could be murdered without consequence. Soon, very soon, they would learn that humans had very different ideas about consequences. The war between humanity and the Vorthan Empire had begun, but it would not be the kind of war the aliens expected. It would not be a war of conquest or territory. It would be something much more final. It would be a war of obliteration. On the capital world of Zephyria Prime, Emperor Vorthal sat on his crystal throne, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The throne room was enormous, with walls that stretched up so high they disappeared into darkness. Thousands of alien species had knelt before this throne over the centuries, begging for mercy that rarely came. The Vorthan Empire controlled everything. They were the masters, and everyone else served them in different ways. The crystalline Nexari built their technology. With their natural ability to grow perfect computer circuits, the insect-like Threx served as shock troops, their 6-armed bodies perfect for close combat. Dozens of other species provided resources, labor, and tribute. Emperor Vorthal was old, even by Vorthan standards. He had ruled for 300 years and conquered 47 different species during his reign. Each conquest had followed the same pattern. His forces would arrive at a new world, demonstrate their power by destroying something important, and wait for surrender. Most species gave up within days. "My emperor," said General Lekver, approaching the throne with careful steps, "we have a report from the Outer Rim. Captain Krelvax has made contact with a new species called humans." Vorthal barely looked up from his reports. "Another primitive species, I assume. How long before they surrender?" "Captain Krelvax destroyed one of their civilian vessels to demonstrate our power. He expects surrender within the standard time frame." "Good. Add them to the labor classifications. The mining worlds need more workers." Meanwhile, 6 hours away through space, the message from the new Sol finally reached Earth. Admiral Kyung-ho was in his office at Deep Space Defense Command when the transmission arrived. He was a serious man who had spent his entire career preparing for the possibility of hostile alien contact. The message began playing automatically. Admiral Kyung-ho watched Captain Dong-woo's report, seeing the alien ships, hearing their demands, and then witnessing the destruction of the Hope of Bizon. He watched the bright flash that erased 3,000 innocent lives in a single moment. When the message ended, Admiral Kyung-ho sat in silence for several minutes. Then he pressed a button on his desk. "Get me the president. Emergency priority." Within an hour, every major leader on Earth had seen the transmission. President Sang-woo called an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. Military commanders, scientists, and diplomats gathered in the secure meeting room beneath the Capitol. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Sang-woo began, "we are no longer alone in the universe. Unfortunately, our neighbors are murderers." The transmission played again for the assembled leaders. When it finished, the room erupted in angry voices. Some called for immediate military response. Others demanded diplomatic solutions. A few suggested trying to negotiate. Admiral Kyung-ho stood up, and the room gradually fell silent. Everyone knew his reputation. He had studied military history his entire life and understood warfare better than anyone alive. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," he said. "These aliens have clearly done this before. They have a system. They show overwhelming force, murder civilians to prove their power, and expect immediate surrender." "What do you recommend?" asked President Sang-woo. "We need more information. But based on what we've seen, I believe we are dealing with a galactic empire that has never encountered serious resistance." Mun Seo, the head of intelligence analysis, had been studying the alien transmission carefully. She raised her hand. "Admiral, I've been analyzing their behavior and language patterns. I think these Vorthans see this as routine. The way their Captain spoke suggests they've done this hundreds of times." "That's what worries me," Admiral Kyung-ho replied. "They're confident because their method has always worked. They don't understand that different species might react differently." Dr. Ji-hoon, a military historian, opened his tablet and began reading. "Throughout human history, there's been one consistent pattern. When someone attacks our civilians, especially children, we don't just fight back. We make sure it never happens again." "What do you mean?" asked President Sang-woo. "Look at any major war in human history. When the enemy crosses certain lines, particularly involving innocent people, humans don't fight for territory or resources. They fight for complete victory. They fight until the threat is eliminated entirely." Back on Zephyria Prime, Emperor Vorthal was reviewing other reports when General Thekver returned to the throne room. The general looked confused. "My Emperor, we have received an unusual message from the human homeworld." "They surrender already?" "That was faster than usual." "No, my Emperor. They have declared war on the Vorthan Empire. They say we have 48 hours to return their captured personnel and provide full compensation for the civilian vessel we destroyed." Emperor Vorthal looked up from his reports for the first time. "They declared war? These primitives declared war on us?" "Yes, my Emperor. They also transmitted detailed specifications of their military capabilities. They have over 500 warships and claim to have weapons we have never encountered." The Emperor began to laugh. It was a sound like grinding metal. 500 ships? We have 50,000. These humans must be insane. Should we prepare the standard conquest fleet, my Emperor? Yes, send 200 ships. That should be more than enough to deal with these delusional creatures. What Emperor Vorthal didn't understand was that humans had spent the last 6 hours doing something no other species had ever done. Instead of panicking or trying to negotiate, they had immediately begun preparing for total war. Military bases across Earth and Mars had activated emergency protocols. Every human ship in space had received orders to return to defensive positions. Weapons that had been in development for decades were suddenly given unlimited funding and priority production. Most importantly, Something had awakened in the human population that the aliens couldn't comprehend. The images of the hope of Bizan's destruction had spread across every human world. Everyone had seen the casual way the aliens had murdered 3,000 innocent people. Admiral Kyung-ho stood before the assembled fleet commanders, his face grim. Gentlemen, we are about to fight a war unlike any in human history. This is not about territory or resources. This is about survival and justice. What are our objectives, sir? Asked Commander Taemin. Complete elimination of the threat, Admiral Kyung-ho replied. These aliens believe they can murder our families without consequences. We're going to teach them the difference between conquest and obliteration. On Zephyria Prime, the Vorthan leadership was already making plans for their newest subjects. They would put the humans to work in the asteroid mines. The stronger ones could serve as manual laborers. The smarter ones might be useful for simple, technical tasks. They had no idea that humanity was preparing something the galaxy had never seen before. They didn't understand that humans fought differently than other species. They didn't know that when humans went to war, they went to war completely. The message from Earth reached the Vorthan capital just as Emperor Vorthal was retiring for the evening. He read it quickly and dismissed it as the desperate threats of a primitive species. 48 hours, he said to General Dekver. These humans give us 48 hours to comply with their demands. How amusing. Should we respond, my Emperor? No, let them wait. When our fleet arrives at their homeworld, they will understand their mistake. But Emperor Vorthal had made a mistake of his own. He had judged humans by the standards of every other species he had conquered. He expected fear, desperation, and eventual submission. Instead, humanity was preparing to show the galaxy what happened when someone murdered human civilians. The Vorthan Empire was about to learn that some species don't surrender, some species obliterate their enemies instead. The Vorthan conquest fleet assembled in the outer reaches of their territory. 200 massive warships, each one a symbol of imperial power that had never been defeated. Admiral Koratho commanded the fleet from his flagship, a vessel so large it carried its own fighter squadrons and orbital bombardment weapons. Admiral, reported his second-in-command, we have reached the human solar system. Initial scans show they have approximately 60 ships positioned around their homeworld. Admiral Koratho examined the tactical display. The human ships were small compared to Vorthan vessels, arranged in what looked like defensive positions. 60 ships against 200. They must realize the futility of resistance. Should we offer terms of surrender, Admiral? No, Emperor Vorthal wants this to be a demonstration. We will destroy their military forces quickly, then demand immediate submission. What the Vorthan admiral didn't realize was that the 60 human ships were just the beginning. Hidden throughout the solar system on planets, moons, and space stations, humanity had prepared something unprecedented in galactic history on Earth. Admiral Kyung-ho stood in the war room, surrounded by screens showing the approaching alien fleet. Every human military officer in the solar system was connected to this command center. They had spent 2 days preparing for this moment. Admiral, reported Commander Sujin, who had been rescued from the New Sol during a prisoner exchange, the alien fleet is moving into attack formation. They're not even trying to hide their approach. That's because they think this will be easy, Admiral Kyung-ho replied. They've done this so many times they believe it's routine. Dr. Ji-hoon, the military historian, was analyzing the alien formation through the tactical computers. Admiral, they're using the same approach pattern they've used for centuries. Their ships move in predictable formations, they rely on overwhelming firepower, and they expect the enemy to retreat or surrender. What does human military doctrine say about facing overwhelming odds? Admiral Kyung-ho asked. Don't face them, Ji-hoon replied. Change the rules of engagement. The Vorthan fleet moved closer, confident in their superiority. They had fought hundreds of space battles using the same tactics. Form battle lines, demonstrate firepower superiority, wait for enemy surrender. When surrender didn't come, destroy enough ships to force submission. Admiral Korathal opened the communication channel to the human fleet. His face appeared on screens throughout the human solar system, showing the same arrogant expression his species had used to intimidate countless worlds. "Humans," he announced, "you have witnessed the power of the Vorthan Empire. Your resistance is futile. Surrender now, and we will allow your species to serve the Empire. Continue to resist, and we will destroy every ship, every station, and every world in your system." The response came from Admiral Kyung-ho himself. His voice was calm, but there was something in it that would have warned any human to be very careful. "Admiral Korathal, you have entered our system with hostile intent. You represent a government that murders innocent civilians. You have one opportunity to withdraw peacefully." The Vorthan Admiral laughed. "You dare to threaten us? Look at your ships." "Look at our ships. You cannot possibly believe you can win this battle." "You're right," Admiral Kyung-ho replied. "We can't win a traditional battle against your fleet?" Admiral Korathal smiled, thinking the humans were about to surrender. "Then you admit defeat?" "No, we're just not going to fight a traditional battle." What happened next had never occurred in galactic military history. Instead of forming battle lines or trying to match the Vorthan fleet ship for ship, the human vessels scattered in all directions. Some headed toward the outer planets. Others dove toward the inner system. A few simply disappeared from sensors entirely. "What are they doing?" Admiral Korathal demanded from his bridge crew. "Unknown, Admiral. Their ships are not following any recognized combat formation." "Are they retreating?" "It doesn't appear so, sir. They seem to be surrounding U.S. Admiral Korathal looked at the tactical display and realized something disturbing. His fleet was now spread throughout the human solar system, but the human ships hadn't fled. Instead, they were everywhere, moving in ways that made no tactical sense. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, "we're detecting massive energy readings from the third planet, and the fourth planet, and several of the moons." On Earth, Admiral Kyung-ho gave the order that would change galactic warfare forever. "All stations implement Protocol Zero. Show them what human military doctrine really means." Across the solar system, weapons that had been hidden on planets and moons suddenly activated. These weren't ship-based weapons following traditional space combat rules. These were planetary defense systems designed by a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of total war. Massive rail guns on Earth's moon fired projectiles at near-light speed. Orbital weapons platforms that had been disguised as industrial stations revealed themselves. Most shocking of all, human ships began using tactics that no civilized species had ever employed. Commander Yan Wu piloted his destroyer directly at a Vorthan battleship. His ship was severely damaged and losing life support, but instead of retreating or surrendering, he accelerated to maximum speed. "This is Commander Yan Wu to all human forces," he transmitted. "When your ship is dying, take theirs with you. Make every human life cost them 10 of theirs." His ship impacted the Vorthan vessel at tremendous speed, destroying both ships instantly. Across the battle zone, other human commanders began following his example. Admiral Korathal watched his tactical display in growing horror. This wasn't how space battles were supposed to work. Civilized species fought for position, tried to disable enemy ships, and accepted surrender when it was offered. These humans were doing none of those things. "Admiral," his communications officer shouted, "the humans are targeting our command ships specifically. They're ignoring our battle cruisers and focusing on vessels with senior officers aboard." "How do they know which ships carry our commanders?" "Unknown, sir. But they seem to have detailed intelligence about our fleet structure." What Admiral Korathal didn't know was that humans had spent their entire history studying warfare. They understood that armies without leaders become confused. They knew that destroying command structure was more effective than destroying individual weapons. Dr. Ji-hoon, monitoring the battle from Earth, explained to his staff, "Every human military academy teaches the same principle. You don't fight the enemy's strengths. You attack their weaknesses, command structure, supply lines, morale. The Vorthans fight like they're playing a game with rules? We fight like we're trying to eliminate a threat. The battle lasted only 4 hours, but in that time, the Vorthan understanding of warfare was completely shattered. They lost 60 ships, including most of their command vessels. The surviving ships found themselves scattered, confused, and facing human forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. Admiral Korathal, his flagship heavily damaged, managed to retreat with the remaining Vorthan vessels. As they fled the human system, he transmitted a desperate message back to the Empire. This is Admiral Korathal to High Command. The humans dock. They don't fight like civilized beings. They don't follow the accepted rules of engagement. They deliberately ram their ships into ours. They target command vessels specifically. They hide weapons on planets and moons. This isn't war as we understand it. Emperor Vorthal received the transmission in his throne room. For the first time in 3 centuries, he felt something he had almost forgotten: uncertainty. How many ships did we lose? He asked General Dekver. 60 ships, my emperor. But more importantly, we lost most of our senior commanders in that fleet. And the humans? They lost perhaps 20 ships, but they seemed willing to trade their lives for ours. They showed no interest in preserving their own forces. Emperor. Vorthal stood from his throne, something he rarely did. General, in our 1,000 years of conquest, has any species ever deliberately sacrificed their own ships to destroy ours? No, my emperor. Most species try to minimize their losses. These humans seem to view their own deaths as acceptable if they can kill more of our people. On Earth, Admiral Kyung-ho reviewed the battle reports. The cost had been significant, but the message had been sent. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity fought by different rules. Casualties? He asked Commander Sujin. 412 human lives lost, sir. But we destroyed 60 alien ships and sent a clear message to their empire. What kind of message? Sujin looked at the tactical reports, remembering the way human ships had deliberately rammed into alien vessels, the way human commanders had chosen death over retreat. That we don't fight to win territory, sir. We fight to eliminate threats, and we're willing to pay any price to do it. The first battle between humanity and the Vorthan Empire was over. But it wasn't really a battle at all. It was a demonstration. The aliens had shown humans how they conducted war according to galactic standards. Now, humanity was about to show the galaxy what war looked like when conducted by a species that had no interest in following anyone else's rules. The Battle of Alpha Centauri began at dawn, ship time. Commander Taemin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Revenge, watching as the largest Vorthan fleet in history approached the human colony system. 300 alien warships, led by Emperor Vorthal himself, had come to crush humanity's second most important system. Sir, reported Lieutenant Yunji from the communications station, the alien fleet is hailing us. Put it through, Taemin ordered. Emperor Vorthal's face appeared on the main screen. The alien ruler looked different from his subordinates, older, with scars across his gray skin and eyes that showed centuries of successful conquest. Human commander, the emperor began. I am Vorthal, ruler of 400 worlds. You have caused great annoyance to my empire. Today, that ends. Surrender your colony and your fleet, and I will allow your species to continue existing as our servants. Commander Taemin studied the alien emperor carefully. Behind him on the bridge, his crew prepared for battle in complete silence. The humans had learned much from their first encounter with Vorthan forces. Emperor Vorthal, Taemin replied, you murdered 3,000 innocent humans. Children, families, people who had never harmed anyone. Did you think we would just forget that? All conquered species lose some population during integration, Vorthal said dismissively. It is the price of resistance. Surrender now and no. More humans need to die. You're right, Taemin said quietly. No more humans need to die today. But you misunderstand something important. We're not here to minimize human casualties. We're here to maximize yours. The transmission ended. On the bridge of the Soul's Revenge, Commander Taemin turned to his tactical officer. Execute Battle Plan 07. What happened next became known throughout the galaxy as the 47-minute war. It was 47 minutes that changed how every species in the galaxy thought about warfare. The Vorthan fleet approached in their traditional formation. Massive wedge designed to concentrate firepower and intimidate enemies. They had used this formation successfully for 1,000 years. Emperor Vorthal watched from his command ship as the human fleet moved to meet them, but the humans weren't forming battle lines. Instead, their ships scattered into dozens of small groups, each moving in a different direction. Some headed toward the system's asteroid belt. Others dove toward the local star. A few seemed to be running away entirely. What are they doing? Emperor Vorthal demanded. This is not how fleet battles are conducted. His tactical advisor studied the displays. Unknown, my emperor. Their movements don't follow any recognized military doctrine. Perhaps they are attempting to flee? It doesn't appear so, sir. If anything, they seem to be positioning themselves. Lieutenant Yunji worked at her station aboard the Soul's Revenge, her fingers flying across the control panels. She was humanity's leading expert in cyber warfare, and she had spent months studying captured Vorthan technology. Commander, she reported, I'm reading massive network traffic between the alien ships. They're using quantum entanglement for instant communication across their fleet. Can you disrupt it? Taemin asked. Better than that, sir. I can take control of it. This was the first thing that separated human warfare from galactic standards. While other species focused on destroying enemy ships, humans focused on destroying enemy capabilities. Instead of trying to outgun the Vorthan fleet, they attacked the systems that allowed the fleet to function. EU Unji cyber attack hit the Vorthan communication network like a virus. Within minutes, enemy ships were receiving false orders, tactical displays were showing incorrect information, and worst of all, the Vorthan commanders couldn't talk to each other. My emperor, the tactical advisor shouted. We're losing communication with the fleet. Ships are reporting conflicting orders. Emperor Vorthal watched his tactical display flicker and distort. How is this possible? Our communication systems are quantum encrypted. Unknown, sir. The humans seem to have technology we've never encountered. What the Vorthans didn't understand was that humans had developed their cyber warfare capabilities through centuries of conflict with each other. They had learned to break codes, disrupt networks, and turn enemy technology against itself. But the cyber attack was just the beginning. As the Vorthan fleet struggled with communication problems, human ships began implementing the second phase of their battle plan. Pilot Jaesung commanded a small human fighter, one of dozens that had been hidden in the asteroid belt. As the confused Vorthan fleet passed nearby, he accelerated his ship to maximum speed. This is Fighter 7 to all units, he transmitted. Beginning suicide run on enemy command ship. His fighter was tiny compared to the massive Vorthan vessels, but it carried something the aliens had never seen before, a weapon designed specifically for ramming attacks. As Jaesung's ship struck the enemy command vessel, it released a focused nuclear explosion that punched through the alien ship's armor like it was paper across the battle zone. Dozens of other human fighters were conducting similar attacks. But these weren't desperate last stands. These were planned tactics, executed by pilots who had trained for months to use their ships as guided weapons. Emperor Vorthal felt his command. Ship shake as explosion after explosion rocked the hull. What kind of weapons are those? He demanded. They're not using weapons, my emperor, his advisor replied in horror. They're using their ships themselves as weapons. The pilots are deliberately crashing into our vessels. That's impossible. No civilized species would sacrifice their own people like that. But it was happening all around them. Human ships, some heavily damaged, some perfectly functional, were accelerating into Vorthan vessels and detonating on impact. Each human death took multiple alien ships with it. Commander Taemin watched the battle from his bridge, his face grim but determined. Status report. Sir, we've lost 32 ships so far, reported his tactical officer. but we've destroyed over 100 enemy vessels. The alien fleet is in complete disarray. What about their command structure? Yunji's cyber attack has been completely successful. Most of their ships can't communicate with each other. Some are following orders from 6 hours ago. Others are just firing randomly. This was the third element of human warfare that shocked the galaxy. While other species tried to fight fair battles between equal forces, humans specifically targeted enemy leadership and communication. They understood that a confused enemy was easier to defeat than a well-organized one. Emperor Vorthal realized his fleet was falling apart around him. Ships were colliding with each other due to communication failures. Others were being destroyed by human ramming attacks. Worst of all, his commanders couldn't coordinate any kind of response. All ships retreat, he ordered. Emergency withdrawal. But even this order was intercepted and modified by ONG's cyber warfare systems. Half the Vorthan fleet received orders to retreat. The other half received orders to advance and engage the enemy more aggressively. The result was chaos. Vorthan ships crashed into each other as they tried to follow contradictory orders. Those that did manage to retreat found themselves pursued by human vessels that seemed to appear from nowhere. Dr. Hanul, monitoring the battle from the Alpha Centauri research station, was recording everything for later analysis. She had studied the behavior of dozens of alien species, but human warfare was unlike anything in her databases. Note for the record, she said into her recorder. Human military doctrine appears to prioritize complete destruction of enemy capability over preservation of human forces. Unlike other species that fight to control territory or resources, humans fight to eliminate threats entirely. The Battle of Alpha Centauri ended when Emperor Vorthal's command ship finally managed to escape the system with only 47 vessels remaining from his original fleet of 300. The battle had lasted exactly 47 minutes. Commander Taemin stood on his bridge, looking at the debris field that had once been the greatest Vorthan fleet ever assembled. The human losses were significant, 53 ships and over 2,000 personnel, but they had proven something important. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Other species want to know what happened here. What should we tell them? Taemin asked. Lieutenant Yunji looked up from her station, where she was still monitoring intercepted alien communications. Tell them the truth, sir. Tell them that humans don't fight to win battles, we fight to win wars. The message that spread across the galaxy was simple but terrifying. Humanity had destroyed the largest Vorthan fleet in history in less than an hour. They had used tactics that no civilized species had ever employed. They had shown that they were willing to sacrifice their own lives to kill their enemies. Most importantly, they had demonstrated that they didn't fight according to anyone else's rules. Emperor Vorthal, fleeing back to his capital with the remnants of his once mighty fleet, sent a message to all Vorthan commanders. The humans are not like other species. They do not fight for conquest or territory. They fight for extermination, prepare for total war, but it was already too late. Humanity had tasted victory and they wanted more. The Battle of Alpha Centauri was over, but the human war machine was just getting started. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threat. Emperor Vorthal stood before the assembled Vorthan High Command, his gray skin darker than usual with rage. The throne room that had once symbolized 1,000 years of unchallenged power now felt smaller, more vulnerable. Gentlemen, he began, his voice carrying the weight of recent defeat, the humans have humiliated us twice. First at their homeworld, then at Alpha Centauri. Our forces are confused, our tactics proven useless, and our reputation damaged. General Dekver stepped forward nervously. My Emperor, perhaps we should attempt negotiations. The humans have proven they are more dangerous than we initially calculated. The Emperor's 4 eyes focused on his general with deadly intensity. Negotiations? They have destroyed over 300 of our ships. They have made us look weak before the entire galaxy. There will be no negotiations until they understand the true price of defying the Vorthan Empire. What do you propose, my emperor? Total escalation. If they want to play by savage rules, we will show them what savagery truly means. The order that went out from Zephyria Prime was unlike anything in galactic history. Emperor Vorthal commanded every available Vorthan ship to begin attacking human civilian targets. Not military bases or strategic installations, but schools, hospitals, and residential areas. Admiral Sungmin received the first reports at Earth Defense Command. His face was pale as he read the intelligence summaries streaming in from across human space. Sir, reported his aide, Major Changmin, the Vorthans have attacked 16 civilian colonies in the past 6 hours. They're not targeting military installations. They're specifically hitting civilian populations. Casualties? 2 million confirmed dead so far, sir. They're using orbital bombardment weapons against cities with no military value whatsoever. Admiral Sungmin studied the tactical displays showing the attacks across human space. The Vorthans were targeting the most defenseless populations they could find, agricultural colonies, research stations, even medical facilities treating wounded soldiers. Sir, Changmin continued, we're receiving surrender requests from several outer colonies. They're asking permission to surrender to the Vorthans to avoid further civilian casualties. Admiral Sungmin was quiet for a long moment. Then he pressed a button on his desk. Get me President Sangwoo. Priority Alpha. The conversation that followed lasted only 3 minutes, but it changed the course of galactic history. When it ended, Admiral Sungmin turned to his staff. Gentlemen, the President has just authorized Protocol 0. Total war protocols are now in effect. Every human civilian is now considered a military target by the enemy, which means every enemy civilian is now a legitimate target for us. Dr. Hyojin worked in her laboratory deep beneath the research complex on Mars. She was humanity's leading expert in xenobiology, but for the past month, she had been working on something entirely different. Instead of studying alien life, she was designing ways to destroy it. The Nexari, she explained to her research team, are crystalline beings who communicate through harmonic frequencies. Their entire civilization is based on crystal technology that resonates at specific sound wavelengths. What are you suggesting? Asked her assistant. I'm suggesting we build weapons that produce sound frequencies specifically designed to shatter their crystal structures. Not just their technology, their bodies themselves. This was something the galaxy had never seen before. While most species fought with general-purpose weapons that could be used against any enemy, humans were developing weapons specifically tailored to each alien species' biology. What about the Threx? Her assistant asked. Insectoid species with a hive mind communication system based on quantum entanglement between their brain clusters. We disrupt that entanglement and their entire military coordination collapses. Dr. Hyojin held up a small device that looked like a simple radio transmitter. This broadcasts quantum static on the frequencies the Threx use for hive communication. In field tests, it caused complete mental breakdown in captured Threx soldiers within minutes. The human war machine was transforming into something unprecedented. While the Vorthans were escalating by attacking civilians, humans were escalating by making war itself more deadly and precise. Commander Sujin stood on the bridge of her new ship, the Vengeance of Bizan, as it approached a Vorthan supply depot. In the Outer Rim, the depot was protected by civilian shipping and claimed to be a purely commercial facility. Ma'am, reported her tactical officer, sensors confirm this is a supply station. They're providing fuel and ammunition to Vorthan military vessels? Any civilian personnel aboard? Yes, ma'am. Approximately 3,000 Vorthan civilians work at this facility. Commander Sujin thought about the 2 million human civilians who had died in the past week. She thought about the deliberate targeting of schools and hospitals. She thought about the children who had died on the hope of Bizan. All weapons target the station's power core. Prepare for total destruction. Ma'am, the civilian casualties, they chose to support a military that murders our children, Sujin replied coldly. Fire! The Vorthan supply depot disappeared in a brilliant explosion. 3,000 alien civilians died instantly. Along with enough military supplies to support a dozen Vorthan fleets across human space, similar attacks were taking place. Human forces were no longer distinguishing between military and civilian targets in Vorthan territory. If a facility supported the war effort in any way, it was destroyed completely. This was the fourth evolution in human warfare that terrified the galaxy. Most species tried to minimize civilian casualties even among their enemies. Humans had decided that any population supporting a genocidal war machine was a legitimate target. Emperor Vorthal received reports of the attacks on his civilian infrastructure with growing alarm. "How many facilities have we lost?" he asked. General Lekvar. 47 supply depots, 12 shipyards, and 6 major industrial complexes, my emperor. The humans are specifically targeting our ability to support our military forces. Civilian casualties? Over 50,000, my emperor. The humans show no interest in minimizing collateral damage. What the emperor didn't understand was that humans had redefined the concept of collateral damage. To humanity, any death that helped end the war faster was acceptable. Any destruction that weakened the enemy's ability to fight was justified. Dr. Ji-hoon, the military historian, was documenting these changes in human warfare doctrine. "We're seeing the complete militarization of human society," he noted in his reports. "Every human colony is now contributing to the war effort. Every human citizen considers themselves to be at war." This was something the galaxy had never encountered. Most species fought wars with their military forces while their civilian populations remained largely uninvolved. Humanity had transformed their entire civilization into a war machine on Zephyria Prime. Emperor Vorthal was beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. The reports coming from the front lines were unlike anything in Vorthan military history. "My emperor," General Lekvar reported, "our client species are beginning to ask questions about the war." "What kind of questions?" "The Nexari have lost 3 major crystal farms to human sonic weapons. The Threks have had 2 entire hive clusters suffer mental breakdowns from human quantum interference weapons. Our client species are beginning to wonder if the humans represent a threat to them as well." "And what do you tell them?" "That the humans are a temporary problem that will be resolved shortly." "But my emperor, I'm not sure they believe that anymore." The truth was that humanity's approach to warfare was causing panic throughout the galaxy. Other species were realizing that humans didn't just fight to win battles or control territory. They fought to completely eliminate threats, using whatever methods were necessary. Ambassador Na Young stood before the Galactic Assembly, representing humanity for the first time since the war began. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all of them staring at the human diplomat with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Honorable delegates," she began, "my government has asked me to clarify humanity's position in this conflict." The chamber fell silent. Every species in the galaxy wanted to understand what drove human military doctrine. The Vorthan Empire murdered 3,000 innocent humans, including children, as a demonstration of power. They have continued to target our civilian populations. They have shown us that the galaxy operates on the principle that might makes right. Ambassador Na Young paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled alien delegates. "We accept this principle. We understand it completely. And we want you all to know that humanity is very, very good at applying it." The message was clear. Humanity wasn't asking for help or sympathy. They were informing the galaxy that they had embraced the brutal rules of galactic politics and were prepared to play the game better than anyone else. Back on Earth, Admiral Sungmin was reviewing casualty reports when Dr. Hyojin arrived with her latest weapons development. "Admiral," she said, "I believe we're ready for the final phase of the war." "What do you mean?" "We've developed weapons specifically designed to counter every major species in the Vorthan Empire. More importantly, we've developed weapons that will ensure they can never threaten anyone again." Admiral Sungmin looked at the research data. What he saw there. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly convened in the neutral space station orbiting Kepler 442b. representatives from 300 species gathered in the massive chamber, their faces showing fear, confusion, and growing panic. The war between humans and the Vorthan Empire had lasted 6 months, but its effects were spreading throughout the galaxy. Chancellor Vexthara of the Korathi Federation called the session to order. Her species had maintained galactic peace for over 2 centuries, but the human-Vorthan conflict was unlike anything they had encountered. "Honored delegates," she began, "we have gathered to address the unprecedented situation developing in the Outer Rim territories. The human species has introduced methods of warfare that threaten the stability of our entire galactic civilization." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Every species present had heard reports of human military tactics, but few understood the full scope of what was happening. "The reports we have received," Chancellor Vexthara continued, "indicate that humans do not follow established conventions of warfare. They target civilian infrastructure, develop species-specific weapons, and show no interest in negotiated settlements." Ambassador Young sat in the human delegation section watching the alien representatives with careful attention. She was humanity's first galactic diplomat, chosen specifically because she understood both human psychology and alien cultures. "I call upon the human representative to explain their species' actions," Chancellor Vexthara announced. Nyang rose slowly, her movement causing the chamber to fall silent. Every eye was focused on the small human woman who represented a species that had terrified the galaxy's greatest empire. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "My species appreciates this opportunity to clarify our position. The Vorthan Empire murdered 3,000 innocent humans, including children, as their opening statement in this conflict. They did this to demonstrate their power and force our submission. When we refused to surrender, they escalated by targeting our civilian populations." The chamber remained silent, but Nyang could sense the tension in the air. Many of these species had faced similar threats from the Vorthans over the centuries. "You allowed this to happen," she continued, her voice growing harder. "For 1,000 years, you have watched the Vorthan Empire conquer species after species, using the same methods. Overwhelming force, civilian casualties, and the threat of total destruction." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The truth was that most galactic species had accepted Vorthan dominance as a fact of life. "You established a system where might makes right, where the strong can murder the weak without consequence, where entire civilizations can be enslaved or destroyed based on the whims of an empire." Ambassador Nyang paused, letting her words sink in. "We accept this system completely, we understand it, and we are very, very good at applying it." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. This was not the response they had expected from the human representative. "What do you mean?" Chancellor Vexthara asked. "I mean that humanity has learned the rules of galactic civilization. The strong survive, the weak serve or die, and moral considerations are secondary to military power. We thank you for teaching us these valuable lessons." Jun Sco, the human intelligence officer, watched the alien reactions from the observation deck. He had spent months studying galactic politics and understanding how different species thought about warfare and diplomacy. "They're scared," he reported to Earth Command through his encrypted communicator. "They've realized that humans aren't just another species to be absorbed into the existing power structure." On the assembly floor, representative after representative stood to voice their concerns about human military doctrine. "The humans use weapons designed to target specific species," complained the Nexari delegate, his crystalline body reflecting the chamber's lights. "They have developed sonic weapons that specifically target our biological structure. They disrupt our hive communications," added the Threx representative, her insectoid features clicking with agitation. "They cause mental breakdown in our soldiers through quantum interference." Ambassador Na-Young listened to each complaint with apparent interest. When they finished, she stood again. "You are correct," she said simply. "We have developed weapons, specifically designed to counter each species that supports the Vorthan Empire. We have studied your biology, your technology, and your military doctrine. We know exactly how to defeat each of you. The chamber fell silent again. The casual way the human diplomat had just threatened hundreds of species was unlike anything in galactic diplomatic history. "Are you threatening us?" demanded the Pleiadian Consortium representative. "Not at all," Na Young replied. "I'm simply stating facts. You support an empire that murders innocent civilians. You provide resources, technology, and soldiers to a government that views genocide as acceptable policy. We have prepared accordingly." Dr. Meek-young, studying the proceedings from Earth, was recording everything for her analysis of galactic psychology. The human revelation was causing exactly the reaction they had predicted. "Note for the record," she dictated, "alien species appear to have never encountered a civilization that specifically prepares to fight multiple enemies simultaneously. Their military thinking is based on single conflict scenarios." Back in the assembly chamber, Chancellor Vexthara was struggling to maintain order. "Ambassador Ne-young, surely you must realize that your species' approach to warfare threatens the stability of galactic civilization itself." "You mean it threatens the system that allowed the Vorthans to conquer 400 worlds?" Na Young asked. "The system that permits the strong to murder the weak without consequence?" "You're absolutely right. We do threaten that system." "What do you propose instead?" "Simple. Any species that commits genocide faces complete obliteration. Any government that targets innocent civilians will be eliminated entirely. Any empire that views murder as acceptable policy will cease to exist." The human proposal sent shockwaves through the chamber. This wasn't just a threat against the Vorthan Empire. This was a complete redefinition of galactic politics. "You cannot be serious," the Karathi representative protested. "The resources required to enforce such a policy would be enormous. No single species could possibly—" "We're not a single species anymore," Na Young interrupted. "We're becoming something else." Before anyone could ask what she meant, new reports began arriving at the assembly. The information came from neutral observer ships positioned throughout the war zone. "Delegates," announced the assembly's information coordinator, "we have received updated casualty reports from the human-Vorthan conflict." The numbers that appeared on the chamber's displays caused several representatives to make sounds of distress. In 6 months of warfare, the Vorthan Empire had lost over 60% of its military forces. More shocking, they had lost 30% of their civilian infrastructure. "The humans," the coordinator continued, "have lost approximately 15% of their military forces and virtually no civilian infrastructure. However, their industrial capacity has increased by 300% during the same period." This was the information that truly terrified the galactic community. While fighting the largest war in recent history, humanity had somehow expanded their military capabilities. How is this possible? Chancellor Vexthara asked. Ambassador Na-young smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "Because war is what we do best. Every human world is now a military production facility. Every human citizen is contributing to the war effort. We have transformed our entire civilization into something designed for one purpose: the complete elimination of threats to innocent life." The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Species representatives were communicating frantically with their home governments. Everyone realized that humanity represented something unprecedented in galactic history. "Ambassador, Chancellor," Vexthara said, trying to regain control, "surely there must be some way to negotiate a peaceful settlement." "There is," Na Young replied. "The Vorthan Empire surrenders unconditionally. Their leadership is turned over to human authorities for trial. Their military forces are disbanded permanently. Their client species renounce their allegiance and accept human protection instead." "And if these terms are not accepted?" "Then we continue our current course of action until the Vorthan Empire no longer exists." The silence that followed was broken by the Nexari delegate. "And what happens to species that were forced to serve the Vorthans? What happens to those of us who had no choice?" Na Young's expression softened slightly. "Any species that renounces the Vorthan Empire and requests human protection will receive it. We understand the difference between willing allies and enslaved populations. What kind of protection? Asked the Threx representative. The kind that ensures no one will ever be able to force you to serve an empire again. The kind that guarantees your right to exist as free beings. Reports were already coming in from across the galaxy. Client species of the Vorthan Empire were sending secret diplomatic messages to human representatives. The promise of protection from the species that had proven capable of defeating the galaxy's greatest military power was incredibly attractive, Chancellor Vexthara realized. The human fleet that approached Vorthan space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 1,000 ships, each one designed specifically for the complete destruction of the Vorthan Empire. Captain Wujin commanded the flagship Souls. Final word from the center of this massive armada. Captain, reported his tactical officer, we are entering Vorthan territory. Their border defenses are activating. Captain Wu Jin studied the tactical displays. The Vorthans had spent months preparing for this final assault, building defensive positions around every major world in their empire. They knew the humans were coming, and they had prepared accordingly. How many defensive platforms are they showing us? He asked. Approximately 3,000 automated defense stations, sir. Plus their remaining fleet elements, about 400 ships. And how many are they hiding? Lieutenant Sohee, the Marine Corps' intelligence specialist, looked up from her analysis station. Based on our intelligence gathering, we estimate another 2,000 hidden platforms and perhaps 200 more ships in concealed positions. This was the difference between human military planning and galactic standards. While other species planned for the forces they could see, humans planned for the forces that must exist, but were being hidden. Very well, Captain Wujin said. Begin the obliteration protocol. What happened next became known as the Siege of Zephyria Prime, though it wasn't really a siege at all. It was systematic destruction on a scale the galaxy had never witnessed. The human fleet didn't approach the Vorthan capital world in traditional battle formation. Instead, they surrounded the entire system, positioning ships at every possible escape route. Then they began the methodical elimination of every single defensive position. Target the automated platforms first, Captain Wujin ordered. Use the sonic bombardment weapons on the crystalline installations. Quantum disruptors on any facility showing Threx energy signatures. Dr. Hyojin watched from the science vessel Vengeance as her weapons were deployed in actual combat. The sonic bombardment systems she had designed specifically for Nexari crystal technology worked perfectly, shattering defensive platforms that had been thought unbreakable. Captain Wu Jin, she reported, the species-specific weapons are performing exactly as calculated. Nexari defensive platforms are suffering complete structural failure within minutes of sonic exposure. What about the Threx installations? The quantum disruptors are causing complete breakdown in their hive mind coordination systems. Their defensive installations are firing randomly, many of them hitting their own forces. This was the fifth evolution of human warfare that horrified the galaxy. Not only did humans fight to completely eliminate their enemies, they had developed weapons that turned the enemy's own biology against them. On Zephyria Prime, Emperor Vorthal watched his defenses crumble from his command bunker deep beneath the planet's surface. The tactical displays showed the systematic destruction of every defensive position in the system. How long can our defenses hold? He asked General Vekfer. At this rate, my Emperor, perhaps 6 hours. The humans aren't trying to break through our defenses. They're destroying them completely. What about our hidden positions? They found them all, my Emperor. Somehow, they knew exactly where every concealed platform was located. What General Vekfer didn't know was that humans had spent months infiltrating Vorthan computer networks, mapping their defensive positions and identifying every hidden installation. When the final assault began, there were no surprises. Dae-hyun, the human war crimes investigator, monitored the assault from his position aboard the legal affairs vessel. His job was to ensure that human actions remained within the bounds of justified military response. Captain Wu Jin, he transmitted, I'm reading Vorthan civilian evacuation ships leaving the planet. What are your orders regarding them? Allow them to pass, Captain Wujin replied immediately. Our target is the Vorthan military and government, not innocent civilians. This was crucial to human military doctrine. While they would destroy any infrastructure that supported the enemy war effort, they made careful distinctions between military targets and genuine civilians. What about civilians working in military production facilities? Daehyun asked. Any facility producing weapons or supporting military operations is a legitimate target. But we give advance warning when possible to allow civilian evacuation. The human assault continued with methodical precision. Unlike traditional space battles that focused on defeating enemy fleets, the humans were systematically dismantling the entire infrastructure that allowed the Vorthan Empire to exist. Lieutenant Sohee led the Marine assault teams that captured key installations. This is Marine Team Alpha to Fleet Command. We've secured the orbital shipyard. Intelligence reports confirm this facility was producing weapons specifically designed to target human civilian populations. Understood, Marine Team Alpha. Destroy it completely. The explosion that followed could be seen from the planet's surface. The largest military shipyard in Vorthan space simply vanished, taking with it the capacity to build new warships for decades. Across the system, similar destructions were taking place. Communications centers, military academies, weapons research facilities, and command bunkers were being eliminated one by one. Emperor Vorthau realized that his empire wasn't just losing a battle, it was being systematically erased from existence. General, he said to Thekver, send a message to the human fleet. Offer terms of surrender. What terms, my emperor? Any terms they will accept. Complete withdrawal from human space, reparations for damages, whatever they want. The message was transmitted to the human fleet, but the response came back within minutes. Emperor Vorthal, Captain Wujin's voice echoed through the Vorthan command bunker. 6 months ago, my species offered you the opportunity for peaceful coexistence. You responded by murdering 3,000 innocent people, including children. That was a mistake, Emperor Vorthal replied desperately. We can negotiate reparations, territorial concessions, anything you require. You misunderstand the situation, Captain Wujin said, his voice completely calm. This isn't a negotiation. This is the elimination of a threat to innocent life. What do you mean? I mean that the Vorthan Empire ends today. Your government will cease to exist. Your military will be disbanded. Your ability to threaten anyone will be removed permanently. Emperor Vorthal felt something he had never experienced before, complete helplessness. You cannot simply destroy an entire civilization. We're not destroying your civilization, Captain Wujin replied. We're destroying your empire. Your people will be free to live peaceful lives under human protection, just like every other species we've liberated from your rule. The final phase of the assault began at sunset on Zephyria Prime. Human ships moved into bombardment positions around the planet, but their targets were very specific: government buildings, military installations, and command centers. Captain Wujin gave the order personally. All ships begin precision bombardment of designated targets. Rules of engagement remain in effect. No unnecessary civilian casualties. What followed was the most precise military operation in galactic history. Human weapons struck their targets with accuracy measured in centimeters, destroying exactly what they intended to destroy and nothing else. The Imperial Palace, where 1,000 years of conquest had been planned, disappeared in a controlled demolition that left the surrounding civilian areas completely undamaged. The military academy where Vorthan officers had learned to view genocide as acceptable policy was reduced to rubble. The strategic command center where countless species destructions had been planned simply ceased to exist. Within 3 hours, every symbol of Vorthan imperial power had been eliminated from the face of their capital world. Emperor Vorthal, his command bunker breached by human marines, found himself face to face with Lieutenant Sohee. Your Imperial Majesty, she said. Formally, you are under arrest for crimes against sentient life. You will be transported to a human facility for trial. This is impossible, Emperor Vorthal said, staring at the young human woman who had just ended his empire. We ruled 400 worlds. We commanded millions of ships. How could you possibly defeat us so completely? Lieutenant Sohi looked at the alien emperor who had ordered the deaths of millions of innocent beings across the galaxy. Because you fought to conquer, she said simply. We fought to protect. And when you're fighting to protect innocent life, you don't stop until the threat is eliminated completely. The Vorthan Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years, ceased to exist at 2347 Standard Galactic Time. Their government was gone, their military was disbanded, and their ability to threaten anyone was eliminated forever, but the human fleet wasn't finished. Reports were already coming in from across former Vorthan territory. Client species were declaring independence and requesting human protection. Worlds that had been enslaved for centuries were finally free. Captain Wujin stood on his bridge, looking at the tactical displays that showed the complete liberation of 400 worlds in a single day. Status report, he requested. Sir, all military objectives have been completed. The Vorthan Empire no longer exists as a military or political entity. Civilian casualties were minimal, fewer than 1,000 across the entire. 1 year after the fall of the Vorthan Empire, Admiral Dongwu stood on the observation deck of the space station orbiting New Geneva, humanity's new diplomatic capital. Through the transparent aluminum windows he could see ships from dozens of species arriving for the first Galactic Protection Council meeting. The man who had once been an explorer seeking peaceful first contact was now the senior military advisor to the Human Protection Alliance. The transformation still amazed him. Sometimes. Admiral, said his aide, Commander Yujin, approaching with the daily reports, the final tally from the Rehabilitation Council has arrived. Admiral Dongwu took the datapad and read through the numbers. 412 worlds had been liberated from Vorthan rule. 398 had chosen to join the Human Protection Alliance. The remaining 14 had elected to form independent governments under human security guarantees. Any problems with the transition governments? He asked. Minor issues on 7 worlds where former Vorthan collaborators are attempting to maintain local power structures. Dr. The Jin's teams are handling the situations through peaceful political processes. Dr. The Jin had become humanity's chief administrator for galactic rehabilitation. Her job was to help former Vorthan client species establish democratic governments and rebuild their civilizations without the oppressive imperial structure. What about war crimes proceedings? Admiral Dongwu asked. Emperor Vorthal's trial concluded yesterday. He was found guilty on all counts of genocide and crimes against sentient life. The tribunal sentenced him to life imprisonment on a rehabilitation world where he'll work to repair some of the damage his empire caused. This was typical of the new human approach to justice. Rather than execution, even the worst war criminals were sentenced to spend their lives actively repairing the harm they had caused. In the main conference chamber, President Sangwoo was preparing to address the assembled representatives. The chamber had been designed to accommodate hundreds of different species, with atmosphere controls, gravity adjustments, and translation systems for everyone present. Honored delegates, President Sangwoo began. 1 year ago, the galaxy was ruled by fear. Species lived under the threat of conquest, enslavement, or extinction. Today, we gather to establish a new system based on protection rather than domination. The response from the audience was positive, but Admiral Dongwu noticed that many representatives still seemed nervous. The transformation from imperial rule to human protection had been rapid and dramatic. Ambassador Na Young, now serving as the Secretary General of the Protection Alliance, stood to present the new galactic charter. The principles are simple, she announced. Any species that threatens innocent civilian populations faces immediate intervention by Alliance forces. Any government that practices genocide will be eliminated completely. Any empire that enslaves other species will be dismantled. And what happens to species that simply want to be left alone? asked the representative from the Kepler Coalition, a group of worlds that had remained neutral during the war. You get exactly what you want, Na Young replied. The Alliance exists to protect, not to conquer. Any species that wishes to remain independent and doesn't threaten others will be left in complete peace. This was the fundamental difference between the human system and every previous galactic government. Humanity had no interest in ruling other species. They only wanted to ensure that no one could commit genocide without consequences. Dr. Mi Kyung, now serving as the Alliance's chief xenopsychologist, had spent the year studying how different species were adapting to the new system. Her research showed fascinating results. Crime rates have dropped by 70% across former Vorthan territory, she reported to the president's staff. Species that were forced to compete for imperial favor are now cooperating on trade and cultural exchanges. What about military buildups? Asked President Sangwoo. Are any species trying to replace the Vorthans as a major power? Quite the opposite. Most species are reducing their military forces and focusing on civilian development. They understand that aggressive expansion will result in human intervention. The never again doctrine had become the foundation of galactic peace. Any species contemplating aggressive expansion knew they would face the full might of human military forces, which had only grown stronger since the end of the war. Admiral Kyung-ho, now serving as Supreme Commander of Alliance Defense Forces, reviewed the monthly intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The news was consistently positive. No major conflicts anywhere in human-protected space, reported his intelligence chief, Colonel Minesio. 3 minor border disputes have been resolved through alliance mediation. 2 species have requested assistance with natural disasters. What about outside alliance territory? The Outer Rim Confederation is experiencing some internal conflicts, but they haven